good vibrations.
Hello, everybody. This is Julia, and I am Hummingbird Jewel. SOUL-utions, a book review show for mind readers. This is my 20th show, and today I have my author, Keith Anthony Blanchard, and his book, The Divine Principle, Anchoring Heaven on Earth. But before we get started, every show, I like to feature a cause, and this is because my mission statement is to teach love by being an example of love. And what better way than to showcase authors that have spiritual messages and find out what's behind the cover, and also to emphasize the spiritual principle of service. So I asked Keith what his cause he would like to choose, and he chose homelessness. We haven't had that one yet in 20 shows. So what he chose was a website by a man called Mike Manning, and it's called homelessshelterdirectory.org, and it's focused on the Tennessee area. But it's a brilliant concept because what he does is he puts together a list of all these different facilities that can help the homeless. And if you've ever been homeless like I have, sometimes it happens in an instant. I got locked out of my home, so you don't know what to do, don't know where to turn, and so I love this concept, and I always post the website to the causes on the YouTube. I'll convert this Facebook Live to a YouTube. You just click on notes, and then you can find the website to all of the different causes and the shows, this one, and also to Keith. How do you want to get a hold of him on his website, his radio show? All the links will be there on the YouTube. Okay, it's time to meet my author. So Keith Anthony Blanchard, he hails from Louisiana, and in his own words, he was brought up in a middle-class Catholic family, and I was doing a little research on him, and at one time he actually wanted to be a priest, but someone put a guitar in his hand. I think it was his dad. I'm not sure about that part, and Mom was not on board with it. She's like, you know, you need to get a real job. But fast forward, Mother was watching him in a show, like I think she was in her 80s, and she said, "Thank you, Keith, for pursuing your dream." He's all about that. But the guitar didn't keep Keith off his path of spiritual questioning. He didn't become a Catholic priest, but he kept entertaining and pondering himself about God and the universe. And little did he know the day would come when those questions would form a spiritual foundation upon which he'd build the rest of his life. Now, in his late 20s, Keith went through a crisis, and that stripped him of everything that he held dear, and it left him with no choice but to go inside for answers. And this he did, but the peace and the stability that he so desperately wanted still eluded him. But when he was in 32, he didn't give up. You don't give up before the miracle happens. Celestial beings began to appear to him, sharing glimpses of his own future and the future of the world. So not only did they enlighten and guide him, but they instructed him to pass on their message to others so that they too could learn a higher way of living. So Keith currently does what he loves. He has a radio show. I think it's Center of Light, I believe, radio show. He writes books. This isn't his only book. We'll hear more about that. He does person-to-person consultations, but just visit his website, keithanthonyblanchard.com, to see all the wonderful things that he does. But his life is dedicated to empowering people with the tools they need to create their best life. That bliss that happens when a person does what they love, and that not only brings you into balance, but then you can project it outward and heal the world. So his mission is to put a permanent smile on everyone's face, and that's wonderful. I like to teach love, and he likes to teach smiling. And his credo is, why choose to believe when you can know? Welcome to the show, Keith. So happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. It's a joy to meet you and to finally sit down and have this dialogue with you.
I know, it's so cute. He's like, "Can I be on your show?" And I'm like, "Do you have a book?" I go, "Do you have a book?" We're chatting, right? He's like, yeah, I do. Well, he has several books, but I think you're coming out with a new book. Can you tell us about that?
I have a new book that is going to be released with worldwide distribution and publishing by Sixth Books, a division of John Hunt Publishing, on July 31st, 2020. This book is compressed of 30 years of spiritual expansion, exploration, 30 years of blood. I call it blood, sweat, and years. So I'm really excited about it. Yeah.
That's awesome. And then, so also, you tell us about your radio show. And when is that, and how would we get connected with that?
Center of Light Radio happens Tuesdays and Thursdays, and on occasion someone will want to do a quick interview, and I'll do it on a different day. But Center of Light Radio happens on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central Time. You can find more of that at KeithAnthonyBlanchard.com or centeroflightradio.com. It's the same website. But I also do one presentations myself with the audience, and I go inside and I may have a couple of bullet point notes, if any at all. I will do some reading from the Divine Principle, which we're talking about today, that accentuate, support whatever theme I may be going with. I may be talking about anxiety or depression or spiritual expansion or opening up this or whatever the subject may be. I do these one-on-one off the cuff, and I do them whenever Center of Light Radio is not happening. I'm doing a presentation. My thing right now is to constantly continue to add light to the quotient to the field. I want to keep plugging in light. And so that's where I'm at. That's what I do. And I love every fiber of my being when I do it. I love every second of doing it.
Now, I wasn't sure about this. I might be wrong. Are you also going to be doing classes or some kind of group Zooms, or is that coming up too?
Yes, I've done a few in the past. I have another one coming soon. My son actually helped me create this class. I threw out just an idea, and we're shaping it, and we're going to call it, I'm not sure yet, but just the idea of either chrysalis or the metaphorical, the visualization of a caterpillar coming into its own, into a butterfly.
Oh, I love
the
that.
different levels will be the different sessions or the different classes that'll happen for 4 weeks. So that's the working model we have right now.
It's really smart to bring in your son, because then you get all the new techie stuff.
He's brilliant. He's just
I know.
brilliant.
I mean, for me, when I started my YouTube channel is really new, and I've taught myself. I had to get help from a 6-year-old from how to upload my video, because I didn't have my screensaver. And I'm like a 60-year-old getting help from a 6-year-old. I mean, the youth know how to do it. So let's talk about your book. So first of all, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but if you don't want to, what was the terrible?
I'm open for anything. I'm open for anything.
The terrible pain that you went through. I mean, we all have our story, and usually it takes that for some reason for us to kind of have a break or something. But what happened that really got you to, be open to the messages that came in?
I heard the clarion call, the divine call through, which many people have happened, but I just chose to hear the call through relationship breakup. A 10-year relationship went belly up. I had nothing. I was an aspiring professional musician. She was my transportation. She was my intimacy. She was my food. She was my shelter. And when I put God in the closet and played guitar, as my dad gave me, that was all taken away from me. And God came back out of the closet because I needed it. I wanted it. And I had so much fervor, so much passion and sincerity that I got down on my metaphorical knee for 3 weeks. And I said, I need to hear your voice. And I realized, Julia, that I didn't have to play the game for 3 weeks to convince God, okay, I think Keith is serious. I'm going to go pay him a visit. I was so passionate and sincere in my very first asking. It was inevitable to happen. It just so happened. It happened 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
So this is how it all came about for me, because I was stripped. I had nothing at all.
It's hard when you feel that separation from God almost, and you're on that brink. So when you received your messages for this book, when I started reading the book, I'm like, this reminded me of Conversations with God from Neil Walsh. That means you're like having a conversation with God. So are you hearing a voice, or is it just kind of coming through like a ticker tape, or did you start writing, or how did it work?
I was writing my book actually 6 months into the writing process when Neil Donald Walsh came out with his, and there's a
Oh,
lot of
really?
there's a lot of similarities. But one night after playing music at a casino, I was playing 7 sets and I was tired. I just wanted to go to bed. And next morning, about 6 o'clock, I hear, "Good morning, Keith. It's time for you to wake up." And this is answering your question. It's
Yeah.
time for you to wake up. And so I look around the room. There's nobody there. And oh my gosh, it must be a dream voice. I'm just going to go back to bed. And the voice said,
Mhm.
"Good morning, Keith. I asked you to wake up." And it didn't mean wake up out of your sleep. It meant wake up out of your human slumber. And when this began to go down, I found I was laid back on the bed, my eyes closed, and I was thrown into this experience of absolution, the experience of light. I knew the molecules in the wall, where they came from, where they were going. It was my shirt, it was my eyes, it was everything.
Ooh,
When this voice began to speak, though I heard it audibly, it
right.
didn't sound like the Moses burning bush voice at all. It wasn't
Got
like,
it.
"Gee." But I
Yeah.
did hear some sense of a voice, but I smelled the voice. I tasted the voice. I saw the voice. I felt the voice. It was everything imaginable. It consumed me. And when it began to talk, my mind had to process it linearly, because that's what the mind does. It
Okay.
processes thought per thought after thought after thought, fragmented thought. This was given to me in one impression, what I call whole thought. Everything was inherent in this beautiful, life-changing idea that I had to sit down and begin to understand it. And it said, "Keith, go on the sofa, press record on your tape player, and let your mouth move." And I said, "What am I going to talk about?" It said, "Trust me, the thoughts will be there." So I grabbed the tape recorder, sat on the sofa,
Oh.
went into a light meditation, and my mouth just started moving. And to my amazement inside, I'm going, "Oh my God, is this happening?" Basically, I said, "Oh, shit."
Oh, I love that. I love that. Because when I receive messages, I call them incoming, but they're not voices. It's hard to explain it. It just kind of comes in like a thought, right? But I have had the voice, the audibles about 3 times, but they're usually pretty short, and they're usually pretty much just smack me around because I'm kind of like falling off the cliff. One time I literally was going off a cliff, but I was just interested in how that happens, and I love the fact that you used the tape recorder and just, had it come through like that. And then you had it transcribed later. Uh,
I did all the transcription. For the first year, I was in meditation, listening for the voice,
right,
listening, be it audible, however I was receiving it. And after about a year, the voice said, "Keith, you can keep writing. You need to keep writing to fashion the final product. But for the rest of your life, stop all the serious hunkering down and, oh, I'm waiting to get a message," because there was enough of the information that was brought forth. It says, "Now go live the principles," because I don't want you reciting information like a parrot. We want
right,
you to be grounded in the information, to know that you can walk with conviction as a testament that what you are receiving is above and beyond all things that I have learned, at least into that moment. And so, in so doing, over the course of the next 7, 8, whatever years until it became a bestseller, living those principles, I absolutely know unequivocally, without a shadow of a doubt, this is as solid as it gets.
yeah. That is like, this is pretty exciting the way that came through for you and how you wanted to walk the walk and live it and to teach it by example, right? That's kind of what my mission is, to teach by example. So let's talk about being awake after you're awake. I thought that was interesting part of the book. Can you explain a little bit about what that means? Like, we sleep, right? And then we wake up, but then we need to wake up after we wake up, right?
Yeah, as above, so below, on forever it will go, is one of my little throw out phrases. So if we can use that very analogy, when we go to sleep when we went to bed last night, we woke up. Now that we claim that we are awake in this reality, as spiritualists, we still call the next process a waking up. So just because we are awake to another level does not mean that one does not have more work to do. It's a forever process until we become that of dreamer status. So beyond I often talk about the soul, and I use the soul as the place we really need to get to. Well, that's just actually the next leap in the chain, because we really want to be conscious, fully conscious of spirit. But
Right.
until we get to the spirit, the soul has to be a step. There are different levels of soul. There are the individuality level of the soul, which is the pureness of individual expression. And the lower quote, we go into soul, it starts to get a little gray and it starts to get a little driven by agendas and desires, because what we are, we think we're not connected to the soul until we reach it. No, no, if you were not connected to soul consciously, you wouldn't have this bag of bones. So this is soul. I am soul. We are soul. But it's to get to the place where the slate is pure and clean, and then we can effortlessly move into higher and higher frequencies of spirit. That would be considered dreamer status. Until then, we have a whole lot of waking up to do.
Now, one part of your book that I was really love, because I'm visual and I love analogies. I like acronyms too. You had a good one. I want to talk about that one. But explain the spiritual PC and cosmic reality. I just love the way that you kind of put that together, because we can all relate to that.
This is the PC. This is the hardware.
Okay.
And everything in it is the software. And using that analogy, when we identify with the body, we are very hard. We are hard. We are hard on people. We're hard on ourselves until we come in touch with the software. Then we realize how soft and gentle we need to be with ourselves and others around us and the entire world, and even our own perceptions of what we call this and that. But the analogy of the PC towards the awakening human is that we have come to Earth many different times. You know, we create different screen names. So Keith Blanchard, next life I may be so-and-so, previous life I might have been so-and-so. But the idea is that we go inside of ourselves and we browse the inner, not enter, we have to enter, but we browse the internet soul provider, and we can go to any cosmic web page we choose. This is called spiritual liberation. We can roam the cosmos. And so that any site we visit, any website, any spiritual galactic site we visit, in the mind's eye, when we click on the shortcut and we visit, we begin the upgrading process so that we can become more effulgent, more full-fledged human beings. And so if we use that analogy as far as upgrading ourselves to a better and better software program, it's pretty much the same idea. It's just an idea that one can use to see the awakening process to become the information versus the hardware computer itself, because we need to lose body identity. That's truly what needs to die. We need to die in order to fully live.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so speaking of acronyms, moving right along, I've heard several. I love them. Just open yourself, joy. That's mine for Hummingbird. Finding all inspiration through him. That's another one of mine. So you had one for fear that I had never heard before.
And strangely, lovingly, synchronistically, I created that before Neil Donald Walsh came out with his book. So this is not me trying to compare my work to Neil Donald Walsh. I just think it's a beautiful little serendipity. It's fear, false emptiness creating reality, false emptiness. Well, emptiness is truly the place you want to be. We want to be empty because we want to live in the infinite potential. That is the place to be. That's where the real party's at. So false emptiness, right? So false emptiness, I use that acronym because when we live in the false identity and when we falsely identify ourselves with whatever experience that we are projecting onto whatever situation at hand, it gives us a symptom. It gives us a feeling of emptiness because we're not full of ourselves, when in fact is exactly what you need is to be full of yourself. You need to be so full of yourself that you can never feel empty. So when we project our nonsense and our illusion onto people and or situations, it will create a false sense of emptiness, when the truth is everything that has, does, and or will exist truly lives right here inside of ourselves, and the form of infinite potential, which is there for everyone, for those especially who hear the call and simply want it as much as you want your next breath.
Yeah, so that was kind of my next question, was that I am the perpetual infinite potential. And so I was going to say, talk to me about that I am statement, but I think you kind of already just did that. Are you reading my mind?
Infinite potential, infinite potential, infinite potential. There's nothing that I cannot achieve. See, people think, and I'm not saying whatsoever that spirituality and spiritual expansion does not require work. That word scares the bejesus out of me. I'm not going to like that word. Spiritual application. And so when we begin to apply ourselves to ourselves, we begin to vibrate the tines of the soul, and the soul begins to reverberate, and we begin to open up to a sea, an ocean, a divine ocean of things that we could have never, ever allowed into our experience until you've at least put your toe in the water. You got to put your toe in the water, and then you got to walk up to your knee, and then you got to walk up to your hip, and then you got to submerge yourself into the ocean. And or you want to drown in the ocean of love is really what you want to do. And in so doing, everything becomes at your disposal because you're no longer living in fear, you're no longer living in limitation, and you're no longer living in judgment. You get out of judgment, and this gate begins to open up. Everything says, this is what you can have. Non-judgment is the place to be. It's where infinite potential lies, for me at least.
Yeah. And then you said we create our own fear. How do you mean that we create our own fear?
I don't remember that, so thank you for reminding me if I said that to the point, but I'm going to use that anyway. We create our fear. I think it's more that we choose it. And in so doing, we create the circumstances that will, make no mistake about it, will follow. But here's the thing about time. Time is actually of benefit for everyone, because right now, if it was not for the buffer of time, we couldn't handle the fears encapsulated in our head and the manifestations that they would bring forth. So between now, if I choose a fear-based thought, it may take a week, 2 weeks, a month, or a year for it to show up. So in that time, we're given what's called grace to readjust, refine our process, which changes the karma that is bound and destined for us if we sit and do nothing. Because we call that the afterlife. You go into the afterlife and you bring your nonsense. For example, someone dies and they bring this fundamental dogmatic faith stuff with them. And they are in this spiritual place and they see anything that represents illumination or light. Oh my God, that's the light. And I feel so sinful and guilty. It didn't come back in the next year or 2 weeks. You actually fall into a fetal spiritual position of guilt, fear, and you will stay there until you release your own self and forgive yourself from the self-induced guilt. So time is actually a grace that is given to us so we can refine our process and do better and better as we try to become noble human beings.
And what do you suggest for us to do to kind of, ramp it up a little bit? And I know you talked about everybody having their own frequency, which I always, I'm really big into syncing my frequency daily. But what do you do to teach people on how to up their frequency and vibration?
Be joyful. I had someone a few weeks ago send me a list. Keith, I'm trying to understand this ascension process, and they gave me, and it wouldn't stop. And I said, are you serious? And this is what I'm thinking to myself. She goes, what do you do? I said, I'm just a joyful human being. I like being happy. I like being peaceful. I like being kind to people. I like the gift of empowerment. As I offer empowerment to others, empowerment and expansion moves through me, or otherwise there would be no effect for those who I'm trying to reach. So when I reach other people, I'm being reached via what I know as me. One thing I like being is an example. And one example that you will always see with me, as you're probably seeing right now, I am on fire. I live my life in fire. I am passionate. But the other side of passion is sincerity. Passion is the get your hands dirty, auto mechanic kind of thing, roll up your sleeves and get in there and make it happen, right? And the equal part of that coin, the other side, equally as powerful, if not more powerful, is the experience I brought forth with Creator in that 10-year breakup, which I am so sincere about this. It's the I mean it, I'm serious kind of energies. I'm really serious about this. That will crack open any door that blocks you between you and your bliss. Passion, sincerity, humility, being soft, humble, and vulnerability, opening yourself up so the light in you can expose itself to other people. And then other people connect. And then everyone becomes, believe it or not, a part of your very own divinity. And you become a part of theirs. And next thing you know, the human evolution, illumination begins to happen. And so you become a part of the power of everyone else, which is true. So you see, illumination is not really gaining power. You have no more power when you are illumined than you have right now, because the very being that you are right now is creating your experience. It's creating your reality, your world. So the only difference between true conscious illumination and truly being shut off from the light consciously is you creating your experience. There is no difference. You don't get more power when you illuminate. You might know how to wield it a lot better and get exactly what you want, but you're no more less powerful now than you are when you're illumined.
Yeah. So what about doing what we love? Talk to me about, I know you're passionate about encouraging people to do what they love and that they can do what they love. Because I know for me, you know, I spent years in a cubicle not doing what I loved. And, you know, one day I had to walk out. Like I just walked right out the door of that cubicle because I was like, whoa, I can't do this anymore. So speak to me about that.
Doing what you love, doing what you love. Like you said earlier, my father gave me a guitar. Mom says, Keith, you probably be great at it. Go get a job. And I ignored her. Years later, she came hear me play in a venue with world-class players, the drummer for Hank Williams Jr., bass player for Starship. So I was playing with these level of players, grateful and fortunate. And when she saw the band, she was like, I just got off the stage. She says, Keith, I've been wanting to tell you this for quite a while, but tonight I have to tell you. I said, what's that? She said, I'm proud of you. And I said, I've been waiting to hear that from you since I was a child. And so when you do what you love, if we see God as love, when you do what you love, it is your expression of God. If God is love and you are an individual, snowflake, when you become congruent with love itself by being exactly who you are, in that love becomes everything you've ever wanted, everything. Joy. But I can't do that right now. Look, I understand practicality. I get it.
Right.
But the question I pose to each and everyone, listen to me very carefully. If you want bliss and joy in your life, start off, take small bites, small steps, step. Start putting behind you that which you want to die. You want the old paradigm of you to die. That I had a conversation with someone last night. They asked me, why do people drive like maniacs? I said, I can tell you why. Because at 8 o'clock in the morning in any city, the reason they drive like maniacs and they zoom by and don't use signal lights or blinkers or indicators is because they hit snooze until the last possible moment. Now they have to race to work so they don't be late. Same thing on the way back. They hate their job. They can't wait to get home. So they drive like maniacs on the way home. So when you begin to align yourself with your passion and your love, life gets easier. The body begins to receive feelings of bliss and ecstasy and joy and peace. Joy is evidence of the presence of God. So if you're doing what you love, you're always joyful. So the question simply becomes, how do I find what it is I love so I can begin to do that thing? Remove money out of the equation. Okay. Or if you had all the money you could ever use, do what you want simply because it's what you want to do. And you begin to practice and master your craft. Next thing you know, you're better at it than anyone because no one is like you. You are yourself. And so in so doing comes abundance. Abundance in every area of life. Happiness, joy, relationship. Because you don't come home grumpy and take it out on your future possible partner. And all these things, it all just unfolds into this beautiful song. So doing what you love is really the gig.
That's awesome. So you have two techniques called opening and grounding. Do you want to speak a little bit to that? We got about another minute, unless you want to talk about anything else.
We could talk about that, and maybe I can go inside and give a closing statement. Opening. What is opening? What is opening? Okay, here's me. Me as you, just an average everyday person. I go around life and I'm living my life. And so we always know what the practice of meditation does. It creates a silence. It puts us into the field of infinite potential. It makes us feel connected. We feel joyful, all that. But it doesn't require all this. Oh, and this is beautiful and it's powerful to be in a meditative state. I've been doing this so long. My life generally is meditative, open-eyed meditation. But what it really requires from anyone to go from that to the opening is intention. So right now I'm in a normal Keith disposition. So I want to create an opening. It's called intention. So I'm me. I want to create an opening to hear the voice of my soul or God or be in presence. What I do is simply intend. I intend passionately. I definitely intend sincerely. That's the gig on this one. So I'm me. That place. That's it. You're open. It's that place I allow myself to fall into until I feel I'm settled in the falling and I rest now. I don't work. I rest in the space of the opening. That's it. That's opening. Grounding is intending. People say grounding is a coming down of the spirit, which it is. It's a beautiful metaphor. And some people say it's a reaching up. I say, why not shake hands and get all grounds covered? When you look at the Star of David, the pyramid coming up and the pyramid coming down together, they make the Star of David, which implies a heaven on earth deal. You know, heaven is always reaching down. You know, we as people are not always reaching up. Of course, these are metaphors. And so grounding is truly, again, it's intending. I'm intending to be planted on the earth so that I may live my love in this body. So opening and grounding are two facets of the same coin, but grounding can be done through walking on the earth, barefoot in the earth, walking in nature, intending to be grounded, listening to a beautiful meditation. So there are so many different ways, but truly it all comes back to you. If you can launch yourself through sincerity into intention, the universe will move.
Well, you've certainly moved me. Oh my gosh. And I feel happy and joyful. And hummingbirds love that. Oh my gosh. So this went really quickly. So people, you know how to get a hold of him. The YouTube will be posted in a couple of hours. If you're watching the YouTube right now, you just click on notes. I'll have his website where you can find the Center of Light Radio and everything else and get a hold of him. He's very approachable. And he'll just crack you up. Like you had me laughing on Messenger when we first met. It was so much fun. Thank you so much for blessing me and coming onto the show. And buy the book, people. Buy the book. It's an amazing book. All right. Until next time. See you later, everybody. Thank you.
Blessings. Live in the light.